troops surrendered by whole divisions and corps. Her generals gave up their batons, their battered armies, their now discredited authority. Germany's war was over. Third Army's fighting was over, with honor and glory enough for every Third Army man. Typical of the many honors to Third Army enlisted men and officers at different times and in different places was the ceremony at Lisch, Germany, where General Patton presented the Congressional Medal of Honor to Private Harold A. Garman. A fit tribute to the fighting spirit, to the loyalty of the troops of Third Army who fought the 281 days on the 1,000 miles of foreign soil are the words spoken by General Patton. There are men Third Army will never forget.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you Lieutenant Colonel Samuel M. Goodwin, who I believe if we'd known where to look, we might have found him in the film we just seen of the Third Army. Glad to have you aboard, Sam. Sam is your nickname, I believe.
Yes, sir, and it's good to be here.
Sam, incidentally, what is your hometown?
I can't give you a direct answer to that question, Colonel, for I was born and raised in the Army. My father lived many places in the United States and at some overseas station while I was growing.
I know what you mean. You have no home. What is your duty now, incidentally?
At the present time, I'm a planner in the office of the Assistant Chief of Staff, G3, in Washington.
Well, I was correct when I said that you were in the Third Army.
You were, sir?
What outfit were you in?
Throughout my combat experience in Europe, I commanded the 6th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron of the 6th Cavalry Group that fought across France, Germany, and into Czechoslovakia with Patton's Third Army.
Well, in connection with the use of tanks, I'd like to ask you a basic question. And what is the prime purpose of a tank?
The tank is an armored shield surrounding a gasoline engine, today one big gun and several small machine guns. It's designed to perform the mission of mobility, firepower, and shock on the battlefield.
Well, Sam, when were tanks first employed?
The first tanks in any quantity used on a modern battlefield occurred in 1916, when at Ypres, the British used about 50 tanks. It's interesting to note that the tank was a name used by the British to conceal what project they were constructing in 1914 to 16. And the present Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Churchill, as an Undersecretary in the Admiralty, was responsible for the project. Many of the terms used in armor find their origin in naval terms, like the turret, the deck, and ports.
Well, it's considered to be, or the fact is that the initial uses of the tank were successful.
Successful locally and for their purpose. However, the use of that weapon was not fully exploited, probably because the leaders who had the weapon didn't know or realize the value of what they had found.
Well, let me ask you this, Sam. Have there been any great changes in tactics or the employment of the tank since it was first used?
Fundamentally, armor of today is the heir to the traditional cavalry mission of military history. And, however, the tanks of World War II were much more closely integrated with infantrymen than those of the First World War. And even today, we find a more intimate integration, where there are available to commanders at all echelons of military organization tank and infantry teams.
Well, that brings up, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it brings up another point as to the tank infantry team. And I'd like to ask you this question. What do you consider to be the most important elements in a well-trained tank infantry team?
The first element is teamwork, an understanding of the capabilities and limitations, the tanker of the infantryman on or outside his tank, and the infantryman of the men and the weapons within the tank. Secondly is communications, the ability of one to talk to the other. And third is maneuverability, the ability to go across the ground toward the common objective.
Well, Sam, I get out of this one important factor. I believe you believe that the tank is here to stay.
I'm convinced of that.
Well, thanks a lot, Sam. Colonel Goodwin. Ladies and gentlemen, please meet with us again when we tell you and talk about the combat medical man. And be sure not to miss the interview with Colonel Canada, who's the former surgeon to General MacArthur in the Far East Command. So until next week, this is Colonel Quinn speaking for the combat infantryman who asks you to look twice at the man who wears the blue badge. It's the mark of a man.
The Big Picture is a weekly television report to the nation on the activities of the Army at home and overseas. Produced by the Signal Corps Pictorial Center. Presented by the U.S. Army in cooperation with this station. You can be an important part of the big picture. You can proudly serve with the best equipped, the best trained, the best fighting team in the world today, the United States Army.